Good morning, everyone. This is the Environment Sustainability Committee meeting. We have all councillors in attendance that are on the committee. I'd like to ask if any members of the committee have any conflict of interest. No. So we'll proceed with item 1, proposal to acquire property at the agenda lists Grantchester with EnviroPlan levy funds.
May I, Chair?
Yes, Mayor Teresa.
May I just ask for an amendment? I believe that the property is actually in Woolshed, not Grantchester.
Yes, that is correct. It's been pointed out by staff that the detail in the agenda lists the subject property as locality of Grantchester. The locality is actually Woolshed.
And the same street number, street name?
Yes, street number, street name is
It's
correct,
the same.
and the real property description is also correct. So if we could...
So the motion should just be at Woolshed as opposed to at Grantchester, is that
Yes.
correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
So I move for that amendment.
In the recommendation as well, Vicky. See, it says Grantchester twice.
In A and B. Yes.
Okay. So it should be Woolshed.
Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Kunzelman. And just for information, that has occurred purely because the subject property is bounded by both localities, and the database listed it as one instead of the other.
To the Chair,
Councillor Manson.
I'd also add that there's parts of the report that refer to the Mount Grantchester Conservation Estate, so it's confusing at times, those boundaries, isn't it?
Yes. As long as we have the correct name of the property for the record, the real property description is correct, and that's what it would be based on. So we have that corrected now. Would any member of committee like the appropriate council officer to come forward?
Do we discuss the amendment and then don't need to move?
It's been
move the
moved.
amendment?
It's already been
Okay.
moved. So
It's
now,
seconded.
Moved and
We
seconded.
don't need to vote on.
So no member of committee wishes to ask any questions of the appropriate council officer? No? I'll open it for discussion.
Just, Chair, I would just like to highlight how valuable this opportunity is for council. This recommendation here, it's seeking us to expend some of our EnviroPlan money that we collect from the rates. And this particular opportunity for us allows us to connect a couple of different sites that council occupies, but also allow for greater offset opportunities. So I think that it is quite rare that an opportunity like this would become available to us, and I think that there are good environmental outcomes to be had by endorsing the recommendation to acquire this land under the EnviroPlan Fund.
Yes. I also believe we're fortunate in the situation that we have, where we can, council on behalf of the community can take advantage of acquiring neighbouring property to an existing estate. Anything further? Me?
So I guess a question to the CEO. We've discussed in EnviroPlan and what's the status of the EnviroPlan funding and so on.
I don't have the exact detail, but the report identifies that there are sufficient funds within. What happens is if it's EnviroPlan funds are not fully utilised. It's put in what we call a restricted asset, what in the old days it would call a reserve, and they're available for use. So there's adequate funds to both fund the purchase and some immediate works that are required to secure the property. I think importantly, just to add, this broadens the estate, so it actually allows us to fill in, I guess, an area where the estate is thin. And from a wildlife corridor perspectives, that's very important. So it really does. It not just an extension, but it's a very strategic extension of the location. And I guess it would be remiss of me to not mention that this morning I was fortunate enough to speak to a number of staff who work in the natural areas part of council, and the pride that they were discussing the work they do and the value that they do in preserving the natural environment of our community and ensuring, flora and fauna are protected.
And so, does this have anything to do with Cherish the Environment charity, or has nothing to do with it at all?
This has got nothing to do with Cherish the Environment. We may choose to enter in an offset agreements because it will be freehold council land, which would be being paid by a third party to plant and preserve certain areas. But at this stage, it's got nothing to do with Cherish, who in some ways perform a similar function.
Thank you.
Anything further? In that case, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's unanimous and carried. Move to item 2. Stormwater Quality Offsets Program, Capital Works Portfolio Sub-Program, list of projects 2021-2022. To get us started, do I have a mover? Mayor Harding, seconder. Councillor Kunzelman. Would any member of the committee like the appropriate council officer to come forward to
Yes,
answer
please,
questions?
Councillor Milligan.
Yes. Councillor Fickner.
Maybe just for context, Ms Kavanagh, a brief overview what the Quality Offsets program achieves for our LGA, and then I'll have a question about later, but maybe some context would be good around this.
Okay. So the Stormwater Quality Offsets program is a voluntary developer contribution program under the planning scheme. So implementation guideline number 24 covers for certain areas of the city, a developer may opt to contribute financially towards stormwater quality offsets to be delivered off-site rather than delivering them on-site within their development footprint.
And council takes carriage of those works?
Yes.
We organise
so
those
council takes carriage of prioritising projects that will contribute towards the reduction of the nitrogen, phosphorus and sediment as a requirement for the stormwater quality offsets, and delivers projects for that purpose.
Great. And just an overarching question with regards to the project listings. When the projects are being assessed, do we make sure that council has some sort of environmental impact assessment on the particular areas that we're looking to rehabilitate, and just so that if there are flora or fauna that are local to the area, that we're sensitive to that and making sure we're taking care of that?
Yeah, so all the projects do consider environmental factors. So, for example, the Small Creek project in particular, that has really contributed towards good environmental outcomes and considered, fish and fauna movement along that corridor. Similar with the likes of Iron Pot Creek stabilisation. So yes, they are part of the program development.
Awesome, thank you.
Through the chair, Ms Kavanagh, obviously this is the first one I've seen with the stormwater quality offsets. Is this the complete list of projects we're looking at doing that you want to put as a priority for next year's budget, or is this an addition to other ones?
Yeah, these would be the prioritised ones for next year's program. There is an implementation plan that was developed in around 2015, which lists a number of potential projects. We're currently reviewing that at the moment as well to bring that up to date with projects that have already been developed, but also looking at future programs.
And does the oncoming La Nina impact how you prioritise things, and if so, how has
We
that?
do take weather into consideration, so if a project is going to expose a waterway, we will look at that to be done outside of that wet season so that we can mitigate any potential risks.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might also point out, Mr. Kavanagh, that in the attachment, the table may have a column that's legacy. It details by division.
Yes, it is.
Format.
Yes.
Format.
Good pick up.
Moving forward, if we maybe
Remove
update
that, yes.
It doesn't change the matter at all. It's just a divisional allocation, I suppose, as to where it is.
Yes, thank you. We shouldn't be there.
Have any further questions? The technical ones? No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Open the matter to general discussion. Mayor Harding?
I know that in another meeting, Councillor Ireland did mention detention basins in Redbank Plains. I know whether through the chair to ask Councillor Madsen if it's the one there in Sandra Nolan Park that she was discussing, or we should follow up after the meeting.
There are a number of matters ongoing in relation to what Councillor Ireland raised. There were a number of bioretention basins in Redbank Plains that were recently looked at. There will be a following on a notice of motion in a meeting in future in relation to that, and I can forward you a briefing note that was received in response to that.
The chair, I did read the briefing note that I think Councillor Ireland and Councillor Kunzman raised on the detention basins. There's about 400 of them, I think,
Yes.
and a division and an allocation of $200,000. Is there another?
Yeah, so through the chair, we only currently have obligations to maintain 324 of them, but there's an ongoing discussion to be had about how to maintain them to a certain standard, which is probably more appropriate once that notice of motion is raised.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
I would just, yes, during those future discussions, it'll be outlined. The main priority is the functionality of them and the purpose that they provide would be the main aspect there.
Yeah. And what is the expectation in terms of maintenance, in terms of aesthetics versus the effective functioning of the basins? And that's going to have to ultimately be a policy and a funding decision of the council.
Just through the chair, and for the benefit of my fellow committee members, the purpose of the Stormwater Quality Offset Program, as outlined in the report here, is to reduce equivalent loads of total nitrogen, phosphorus, suspended solids. So I think that while those two things may seem inherently connected, this prioritisation probably won't affect the stormwater retention basins, because we have to identify where we have high levels of the aforementioned phosphorus, nitrogen and suspended solids, to make sure that we're improving the worst affected areas at the most appropriate time as well.
Yes, very good point. Anything further? Then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? It's unanimous and carried. Item 3. Capital Works priority list of disturbed land management projects 2021-2022 landfill rehabilitation sub-program. The recommendation is in two parts. Do we have a mover? Councillor Madsen. Seconder? Mayor Harding. Does any member of the committee wish to ask questions of the appropriate council officer?
No,
No?
thank you.
Then I'll open the matter for discussion. If there's no discussion, then I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Unanimous? Carried. That is all items on today's agenda. Thank you, committee members. We'll close the meeting at 12:28.
And are we going to break for lunch, or are we going to move straight on?
And I think we'll break for lunch, because I think
So what time?
12:30, and we'll come back just to give it at 1 o'clock. Okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
See you back at 1300.
Thank you, Chair.